Watching the Sparks Fly is a podcast about driving innovation from the inside out, where we talk to the people who create positive change around themselves one day at a time. It's brought to you by the folks over at Stella Source, where we're on a mission to make metal simple. All episodes are recorded live in the Next Tech studio in Birmingham, Alabama. Did you know the amount of time CEOs spend in their position is on the decline? According to research done by Harvard in 2023, the median tenure of CEOs decreased by 20% between 2013 and 2023. While smaller companies may have more quote-unquote forever CEOs, which are people who stay in their positions longer, they're not immune to CEOs who decide to move on from their position. In small and mid-sized companies, this often leads to someone from outside the company becoming the CEO, which brings us to today's guest. So today I'm joined by Drew Honeycutt, the CEO of Talladega Casting and Machine Company. I got that right?
That's correct.
All right. So I met Drew in the world of technology. We had crossed paths a couple of times. We had some mutual friends. We kind of lived in the same world. And being in Birmingham, Alabama, that's a pretty small world. And you were founder and COO of a startup that we were, that's the first time you and I had worked ever together. And eventually, you were the CEO of an incubator here in town that was fairly well known. But since then, you moved to a whole new world, and I want to talk about your previous life, right, up to, and also the world that you're in now. So, Drew, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Let's start by just kicking off, talk about that world that you and I lived in, which is crazy. I mean, this is decades of technology, right, that we lived in, and now you're in a different world, and I am too, with Stella Source in the metals industry. So this is a weird confluence. And I'm glad to get to find. We had coffee a few weeks ago, and I realized, oh my God, we're having these weird, paths. So tell us about, where you came from and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I'll start with you never know where life's going to take 100%. You, and so I guess where we met was in the technology world, and still very passionate about innovation and technology, and I'll get back to that, and one of the reasons why I am where I am now. But basically had been an entrepreneur all my life, and had a unique opportunity that just some weird circumstances that brought two parties together, and they were the former owner of the business was looking to sell, and I wasn't necessarily looking to buy, but just went on a tour of the business, thinking I was going to have coffee that day, and ended up 7 hours later, he had me convinced I should buy the business. And literally, I got in the car and I called my dad and I said, hey, my dad loves woodworking, and called him, and I figured he would enjoy what I had just visited, and kind of told him a little bit about what it was, but I didn't know what I saw. I just knew that, it was in the steel business and metal business. And so he and I partnered up. We bought the business, didn't know the first thing about the metals industry, had never been around it, never really spent any time. Like I said, didn't know what a lay from a mill when I was looking at it. So, but really got comfortable with the team and the history of the business. It had been around for 73 years at that time, and just fell in love with the Americana aspect of it, the blue collar, hardworking, making from raw material end products that were making impacts in different industries.
It's interesting because I remember my introduction into the metals industry, and I'm a software guy and have been for a long time, consultant and things like that. And way too often the things that I work on felt intangible, right? And software often does. And I remember thinking just how tangible the world is in metals, and it's pretty cool. It's a world that you kind of can fall in love with. So that first, you're out there, right? I'm going to have coffee, and you've got 7 hours. And one of the things, the name of this podcast is Watching the Sparks Fly. And that's one of the things we know people in the metals industry love to do. Given their preference, they're going to watch the sparks fly. They're going to make the sparks fly, right? They're going to go cut the metal. They're going to bend the metal. They're going to do the thing. They're going to make something in the world that's new. And that first day, 7 hours, what did you see? Walk me through your mindset of this is a shop, first time I've ever seen, probably the first time you've ever seen one, at least at that scale. And thinking, wow, this is cool. It's almost, it changes your viewpoint on the world, right, when you see it. So tell me about that first day.
Well, the two things that stand out in my mind. One was the burn table. The burn table and our laser tables. They were going full bore that day. like you're saying, sparks were flying.
Yep.
And I'd never seen that in person.
Yeah.
I'd seen it on TV, obviously, but it just drew me in. And then from there, I just saw capabilities. I saw our shop is unique. We do everything from cutting to gear cutting, machining, fabrication, painting, assemblies, rebuilds. We do a lot of different stuff in-house. And so just not even really knowing what any of that was, I saw a lot of different completed equipment and parts, and I just knew that there was something there that they could make a lot of different stuff. And I was intrigued around to that.
In that shop then, because for anyone who is listening who's not necessarily familiar, you don't always have a shop that can go end to end, right? A lot of times you've got a paint shop that you're going to send to somewhere else. Someone else might weld it, right, and all these other things. But what you're saying is that shop in particular, it is an end-to-end thing. So you were able to kind of see up front, oh, I see some materials over here. Yes. And over here, I see some actual finished,
that's exactly right,
cool-looking stuff that I recognize.
Yeah, and I didn't understand the process in between, but those two endpoints were really what helped define.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, this is how things are made.
Yeah.
You know, and it was, and then from it, and it took me a while. It took me probably a year of just being in the business until I could start looking around. Metal items, you know, in everyday world started popping out, and it was like, okay, we can make this, or this is how this is made. And just, you know, that was just the very beginning of it. And then you get into all the depths of the metals and the, you know, requirements for different things. And, I mean, we service a lot of different industries. We service the defense, the wire drawing industry, underground mining, rail, power generation. And so every one of those industries has different requirements. And so on any given day in our shop, you're working with a lot of different types of materials and a lot of different types of applications. And so it gets complex. And that's been a really fun piece of it, is just how complex, and how that complexity in an aging industry that doesn't have a lot of innovation in it, that you just see opportunities throughout, and they just bubble up. And it's
so what are some of the, yes, you're coming in brand new, you're a year in, you're looking around, you're starting to recognize, you know, this versus that, right? Whatever that might be, and sort of get an idea. What was kind of surprising you in that first year? You know, because the first year you're looking around, and there's going to be moments where you're an outsider and you're going to think, wow, why do we do something that way? Or why is it that way? What were some of the things that surprised you in that first 12 months?
Well, the first thing is how much I had to rely on other people.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, if I was going to have a Zoom call or a phone call with anyone about anything related to our business, I would have someone that
you had to
knew.
grab somebody.
Yeah, somebody was sitting next to me because I needed the assistance, and still do it on a lot of levels. And that's how we operate. But you know, the surprises for me were just how complex it is, and when you're making, let's say, a full assembly, how many sub-assemblies and how many parts go into those sub-assemblies, and just if you break down a full assembly into parts and how you actually make it, it's a very complex process, and scheduling and managing the materials to, you know, steps throughout the routing process. It's really complex, much more so than I had ever imagined.
Yeah, I think, you know, we were actually upstairs earlier, and you and Sean Hughes at Stella Source and I were talking about the complexity being surprising to all three of us. And it really is kind of the hidden industry you take for granted until you step foot into it and begin realizing just how complex it is. And folks are solving every day very unique problems, right? And they're never the same, but they rhyme a lot of times. And so you're walking in, you're like, hey, the complexity is surprising me. It sounds like you still have professionals that you grab, and you're like, oh, I got a Zoom call, and I need so-and-so to come ride shotgun on the Zoom call, because I don't know what I'm talking about. So you're a year in, let's say, right? You're a year in. Complexity has surprised you. You're starting to get a feel for roughly, you know, what the world looks like. What was the first moment you thought, okay, I think I could change something, right? There's a confidence there.
Yeah.
And when was the first time you thought, okay, I'm confident enough to say, I think here's a moment where I can see future state changing?
Yeah. So being an innovator, my first initial moves, first year even, were to let's innovate. Let's find.
So you walked in the door.
Yeah. I mean, I walked in the door and thought, let's innovate. And And so I was out really looking for product opportunities to either partner with folks on that didn't have the means to prototype and iterate, and that way we could assist with them and partner up. And so we went through several different products. I'd say probably 3 or 4 products the first year. Just honestly, in East Alabama, there's a lot of innovators that are working on everything from trucking industry to mining industry, like they're farming, that they're working on instruments and tools and trying to develop something new, but they having a hard time getting it to market, right? And so we went through that process a good 3 or 4 times, and it finally hit me that iterating and prototyping in the metals industry is in fact pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Similar to software. And somewhere in the back of my head.
Turns out.
Yeah, turns out. In the back of my head, I was thinking, this can't be as bad as software, right? But it's the same process, product market fit, and when you're taking a new product to market. And so really from that step, we took a step back and we said, okay, let's look internally. We've got so much internally. We've made tens of thousands of parts over the years. What do we have internally that we can productize and scale up and really help grow the business? And one of those was architectural metals. We had just didn't even recognize it as being kind of a different thing, but engineered product lines or architectural lines are different. And so we stood up another business focused on miscellaneous metals, architectural metals, doing everything from beautiful rear lit wall art to handrails and bollards for parking decks and buildings, and just more niche type one-off projects. And so stood up that business. That was the first one we stood up.
How far in were you when you start? Well, how far in were you started thinking about that, and then kind of what it was the timeline?
Yeah, that idea came up about a little over a year into the business, because I started recognizing some patterns, and it's different. That world's it's just 2 different worlds, and so but they all manufacture the same.
Sure.
And so end of last year, end of 23, it really started focusing on that in earnest, and stood it up at the beginning of this year. Had a lot of success with it this year. Seems like we've found product market fit. Had a couple meetings today actually where people are leaning in and saying, yes, we need your help in making these custom products, because it's harder and harder now than ever to find people that are willing and able to make custom quality steel products. And so, we're leaning into that kind of stuff, but at the same time, we've identified some opportunities that I think we can build some software around that we're dabbling in right now to figure out there's some commercialization around that. And
so when you say that, you mean within your company already, you're doing something.
Yes.
And you're wondering if you can productize kind of, when you say software in the metals industry, a lot of times I think front office stuff, but you're potentially talking about production.
Correct.
You're talking about the whole shop, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Less ERP, not ERP.
Yeah. We do the same thing.
Yeah.
Up to and not including ERP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some opportunities, I feel like, that just in efficiency and communication and smoothing out the production and manufacturing process, really not just in our industry, but across the buyers and just all the way through the chain, because we're in a unique position. We're making parts and equipment for the very beginning of the supply chain. We're helping those suppliers or OEMs make their equipment, but a lot of times it's processing equipment that they need that equipment running to make their product. And so, we're pretty critical in that path in a lot of ways, that their equipment being down and us not being able to repair it can affect that product. And
okay, so let me make sure I understand, because you and I have talked a bit, but I don't think I've ever grasped this. So what you're saying there is you're dependent on a lot of times to have parts and make things for the machines that make the machines.
That's correct.
Right, which is as we know, a very different thing than making a machine.
Correct.
And so what you're saying is primarily a lot of the parts you focus on, probably hard to get, probably hard to design, probably very high or very narrow tolerances.
A lot of old equipment that they don't make parts and equipment for. The businesses have been out of business for 30 years. A lot of reverse engineering.
Does that take the form of like someone has like, I've got a broken part, reverse engineering? What kind of forms does that take?
Everything from, we get a lot of gears sent in. I mean, we get stuff sent to us from all across the country.
Okay.
A lot of times they'll send a picture and we can tell them if we can help, and then they'll mail the part over. So we'll use different like ferro arms to scan, and then our engineers will do manual measurements and actually design, the part, and then we'll manufacture it from there. But these are typically high wear parts. A lot of times are pretty critical in the process. In the wiring industry, it's a drawing process where they're drawing copper rod down into whatever gauge wire that you're going to use. And so all the parts and dies and components that go into that, if they go down, that line's down, and we're talking, millions of dollars an hour in lost productivity.
Yeah, for me, my reference point there was automotive. So I spent a lot of times writing software for automotive companies, right? So your Toyotas or Mercedes or whoever's. And it always amazed me when you talk about a production line, how efficient they really are these days. And you have things like lunch breaks, right? And they're 30 minutes, let's call it, per shift. And you have a mechanic crew. And that mechanic crew has 30 minutes during lunch. That's when the machines are planned to be maybe not moving. They have 30 minutes to repair whatever it is, and that's it. And they go out 3 times a day, 30-minute increments. And watching the efficiency of, they have to have their parts, they have to have everything right, and they go out and get it done. That's a level of efficiency that a lot of people never, get witness to. But the reason it exists is simply because these companies depend on those production lines. That is their entire method of making money.
That's it.
And they simply cannot afford for them to be even slow, much less down.
Yep.
So you've got these companies, right? And you said all over the country, and they're saying, hey, and this is the business you came into in a lot of ways.
Yes.
This was the business, and you said, hey, I came in, looked at some patterns, saw that there's also architectural business. Those do sound like very different.
Yeah, they are.
Like concerns, right? The way you address the market. At the end of the day, you still make parts.
Yep.
And it's the same core materials. So when you started looking around, you're doing what I would call pattern recognition, right? It's like, okay, I see a pattern here that I think I could turn into a product, a thing that we do better, maybe better than anybody else. Do you think in this industry that those things are able to be changed, right? And what gives you kind of the idea that, hey, I can change these things from right here in Talladega? Like what is in Drew that kind of makes those two things true?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I believe in our team. Being at 75 years old now, it does take
the company,
a while.
Not
yeah,
Drew.
yeah, not me. The company's 75 years old.
Yeah.
Old habits die hard, and so that's been, turning a 75-year-old business into more of an innovative business takes time, right? And so. We've really just been focused on identifying opportunities and kind of going back to what you were saying earlier. A lot of our innovation is in product lines. So for the wiring industry, for instance, we are innovating on some of the parts that last longer, that we're doing like ceramic coating on some of our stuff, and it lasts a lot longer. And so we're selling those parts, and they're replacing old parts with those. And it's just helping their uptime stay in check. So there's a lot of other innovative things that we're doing to help our customers in addition to looking for business opportunities. And so that's really kind of how we're focused on it, is how do we add more value to our customer every day, be more efficient, and really help them be more efficient and stay up in what they're doing.
So do you personally talk to a lot of those customers and learn about so you go see their operations?
I'm pretty active with seeing and visiting with customers. We have a lot that come to see us as well. And so, especially with the military stuff, I'm very much hands-on with that.
Why would you not, right? That's part of the fun, right?
Yeah.
I get to come see how they're going to pull wire, right? Like I need to know, what does that even look like? I find that stuff fascinating. So in this process, now how long have you been, what is your total tenure right now?
January 25 will be 3 years.
3 years.
Yeah,
okay.
Coming up on 3 years.
So you've been there 3 years, and you're talking about some changes you've kind of already seen in your mind's eye of where you want to go, and you've started making them. Has there been a moment when you thought, this is going to be tough? Right, this is actually going to be harder than I might have thought it was?
Yes. So we inherited a really good business. On the heels of COVID, manufacturing was onshoring again, and there was just a lot of activity. And so we inherited a good business. And so into the first year, it was like, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I was looking for. Well, it didn't take but a couple of days, to get the rude awakening that this business is hard, and there's a lot of nuances that go into it, and had a lot to learn. And so, I would say at the end of the first year, it was a rude awakening of, this is a business I'm really going to have to sink my teeth into and learn as much as I can, because I'm going to need to know. I can't just run this as a business operator and not be hands-on into what's actually happening in the business. If I'm going to take this thing to the next level, I've got to be neck deep in it with everybody else, and full understanding of, from the time that we get an RFQ in the door to the time we ship it out, what happened. And then, even after that, when we bill. So it's taken me 2 years post that first year to now I'm at a point where, okay, it's time to come up for air and really focus on growth and what that looks like, and really deepening my dive into opportunities and market discovery, and talking to customers, and being less in the business and working on the business more.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you what I picture in my head. It didn't happen. This is not what happened. But in my head, here's what I picture. I picture first year, you're learning some stuff, and at some point, 12 months, 14 months in, you come walking out of the office, rolling up the sleeves on your nicely pressed white shirt. Drew does not, he's not a suits guy. Never seen you in a suit, I don't think. But you're rolling up your sleeves like, all right, I've actually got to learn the nuts and bolts of this work. So in my head, that's what happened.
Yeah, I'm a city slicker. I mean, and Talladega is in the country. We don't just race cars there.
Yeah.
We're in the country, and
that's one thing. You do a good job of racing cars.
Yeah,
too.
we do that around a tri-oval. But you're right. I mean, there was this aspect of, okay, it's time to roll up the sleeves, and it's time to really, because there's so much here, and it's I find it so incredibly interesting. The more every single day I find my way deeper and deeper into it, and it's just layer after layer of interest that I find in it, and I'm just touching the tip of the iceberg. And so
some people have been in this industry for 30, 40, 50 years, and there's just no way to get that knowledge without being there. And it's an experience. One of the things that has impressed me is it is an experience first industry, where what I mean by that is the best way to learn it is to be part of it. Yep. And so was there actually a trigger moment where you're like, okay, I've got to roll up my sleeves?
Well,
was there something that happened, or was it just more of an overtime?
No,
I'm going to have to get in the middle of it.
So our team, I hate to keep saying this, but we're a 75-year-old business, right?
Yeah.
So we have a couple of guys that have been with us for over 50 years.
Yeah, right.
And I knew this when we bought the business, that we had a good number of folks that have been with us for 25 to 30 plus years. And then there was a good number of guys that have been with us for less than 5. But that between 5 and 25 years, there was very little. And that's a direct reflection, I think you would see across the industry, that there were not near as many people going into the trades. And so there is absolutely a skill gap in not just this industry, but the trades in general. And so that moment for me was the realization of, okay, we talked about this when I bought the business, but here we are, a year, 2 years later. I really need to start thinking about the future and how we plan for the future. And I mean, our entire team's still with us and everything, but just for planning for 5 to 10 years from now, how do we do that? And I think it's going to look different than the way we've done it the last 75 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, things are changing so rapidly with the digitalization of the world, that this is one industry that I feel like has not really focused too heavily on it. And so that's kind of our path forward, is how do we drive more inbound leads? How do we manage our customers better, more methodically using CRM and, just the modern day tools that are out there that historically I think a lot of companies in this industry just don't really know about.
Yeah. It's
not a lack of, I don't want to do it. It's just knowledge of the products. And so that's a lot of what we're focused on right now and moving forward is how do we use the internet, and how do we use technology to really boost our business.
It was interesting. And we said this in the previous podcast, and I'm beginning to believe we talk to folks in the metals industry, it's going to continue to be something we say. It's easy to look at the metals industry and not think about innovation. But I went to FabTech last year. That's going on right now down in Orlando. But I went to the one in Chicago last year and was blown away. There's innovation.
Oh, yeah.
It's mind-blowing levels of innovation, and not as much of it as in software. And I feel like software has at some point in the past 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, co-opted the word innovation to mean software, and it doesn't. And so these businesses that are 75 years old, 100 years old, whatever, they have changed every day, right, to get to be a 100 years old or 75-year-old business. They have innovated along the way, probably in ways that seem effortless or invisible a lot of times. And then the digitalization, right, we're talking about is something that the industry is not far forward in. And so there is room to be innovative there. And what I have found is people are not necessarily resistant to innovation or change as much as it is this is the kind of innovation and change that is here present in the modern day. And I think that's super fascinating. So along the way, you've talked about your team quite a bit. You come in, so Drew comes in, hey, I'm the new guy, I feel like the new guy for a year. Around a year, I roll up my sleeves, stop being the new guy a little bit at a time, one day at a time. Who were, you've got this, you have this mind, you walked in with this mindset of change, right? You told us that. So you walked in, you're like, I'm ready to innovate. But now you're 12, 14 months in, and you're like, I have to learn more to innovate. So who are the allies that you were kind of finding in the business to be like, okay, who are the people that you kind of know? You don't have to use names, right? But what kind of folks did you find in that? Was it the 5-year folks, the 25-year folks, the 50-year folks? Like, what was the mix of people that were like, these are my allies in driving change?
Yeah, in the organization?
Yeah, inside your company.
Yeah, so, it's interesting when you walk into a business that's been around for an established business that's been around for a while that there's a lot of people saying, well, don't listen to this guy. Don't, and so you have to, it takes a little bit of time to kind of get through the mud to figure out like who are those people.
Right.
And really it comes down to a handful of folks, right? One was originally it was our accountant. The accountants had been working on the business since 92 and we got comfortable with them and really leaned heavily on them. But then our COO, he'd been there forever. He'd done everything in the business plus some, just salt of the earth guy, a couple of our sales guys and folks that have been with us for 50 plus years, kind of hearing their stories of how things were during the heyday of the business, and how the founder operated the business. But then at the same time, I love hearing the young guys, the guys that 22, 23 years old that have been in it for 2 years. What do they need? Because they're the future of this, and we're trying to build a business that creates a lot of opportunities for everyone, both financially and professionally. But really, like, we want to create an environment that people want to come work there because it's harder than ever to find a good machinist or fabricator that will consistently show up and wants to work. And it's not necessarily because it's not an inflection of people. It's just an inflection of there was such a gap there and lack of people learning the skills and the trades that there's just not a talent pool of people.
Right.
And so that's where automation and artificial intelligence and, all those things will come in, I think, in the future. And you're already seeing it happening. The struggle we have in automation is we operate as a job shop, and so everything's custom. And so automating around customization is not as easy as it is if you're doing, running production parts. And so there's always going to be a need for humans to do what we do. You can automate almost the entire process, but there's always going to be a requirement for humans to do what we do. And so I think that's one of the big challenges going forward is like as an industry, how do we come together and say we need more in this industry because it's the heartbeat of our country.
Sure.
And this is everything we encounter on a daily basis comes from or is shipped on.
Yeah.
Or,
at some point slid across metal.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everything touches it.
So we share that in an industry, in a world where your talent pool is smaller than the need, right? right? That's a reality in software development world,
Yep.
software engineering world, reality in your world, different reasons, but it's the same set of problems. And you do have to have a mind towards creativity when you talk about these folks. It's one of the things that I did learn working in and around factories is the only way you can truly make a process is if you absolutely know the problem ahead of time. If that's not true, it's really hard to make a process around it, and it requires some amount of creativity.
Exactly.
And we run into that a good bit where it sure would be nice to go and say we want to create an assembly line that develops software or develops whatever, but the only way that works is if there's no variation.
Yep.
And if you do live in a world where variation is kind of the differentiator or a key component of what you do, people become very necessary.
Yep.
And the skill required to do it is very high, right? Creative people who can also work in a very production-oriented environment. It's easy to find artists, right? It's hard to find artists who can make money, right?
Yep.
That's a very different thing. And it's a fascinating thing to watch. So you're going around this business, right? You got lots of folks, you got politics to play. Did you intentionally set out to say, okay, I'm trying to figure out who the allies are going to be in change? Because we already know that I knew when you told me this is what you were going to go do, that Drew was going to try to make some changes in this world.
Yeah.
So did you set out and say, okay, look, I am going to find these people. And if you did, what were some of the things that kind of triggered you? You said your accountant, right, your COO. What were some of the things that they said or did that made you think, okay, that's actually someone I can depend on to help back some change that we got coming in the future?
Yeah, and I failed to mention in that previous list, my CFO.
Okay.
He's my best friend from college. One of my
It's
best
like
friends.
you're winning an Emmy. Like, I can't leave somebody out.
Yeah. Seriously, because he's one of my best friends from college. Ends up being this whole story is about timing and how things just kind of align. And he had left his previous engagement at the same time that I was buying this business, and so he became my CFO. And just having my buddy from many moons ago that a phone call away and knew the business. That was such a critical moment to align myself with somebody that I can trust, that I knew. I mean, I trusted everybody in the organization, obviously, but I've trusted him for a long time, and he trusts me, right? And so having that ally gave me a lot of confidence to go and move forward. And I mean, you're doing a lot of things blindly, and ultimately, I'm the first year I'm looking at the bank account more than I'm looking at any type of reports because I couldn't figure out how to run the reports, And so, it's really been a incredible learning experience. And, I can't thank everybody that's played a part of it so far. And there's been partner vendors and partners and
so external,
external
so
partners.
let's hit on that for a minute, because you had mentioned to me, before we started recording, that there is a world where you're looking out. It's almost impossible to innovate completely internally, and this is a podcast about what it takes to innovate on the inside. And when you do that, you immediately have to start looking outward, right, for people who would be attracted to innovation and things like that. So when you're looking out in the world, what are you looking for now that you're kind of expanding your horizons of, okay, we're going to innovate, we're going to change, we're going to do some things, and I'm going to need partners out in the world who do these things as well. What are you kind of looking out in the world and seeing, and what are you looking for?
Yeah, the interesting thing about our industry is that even though we do a lot of services in-house, there's a lot of things that we do not do in-house, like flame hardening or heat treating, or just some various things that we don't do in-house, right? And so machining, there's plenty of machining that we don't have the capability to do on a certain sub-assembly of a part, and so we'll cooperate with another machine shop and they'll run it for us. And so there's a lot of cooperation in this industry, way more. That was a really surprising thing to me, was just how cooperative machine shops are with each other. And because
you mean how willing to coordinate?
Yeah, I mean, we share work with each other,
right,
because one machine shop has capabilities that another one doesn't. And at the end of the day, customers have needs, and the current state of the machining or manufacturing, the manufacturing end that we're in, there's not that many of us left in the country. And so trying to find somebody that can do all of the things that a customer needs in one place is not always capable. So if you can send it to us and we can do 85-90% of the work, and then there's just one small piece that we need another machine shop to help us on, it makes more sense for us just to coordinate the entire thing. And
Now, do you feel like you found those?
Yeah,
a lot of those relationships.
A lot of those were already in place when I bought the business.
So
but
it was
just,
you indexing them, inventorying them, understanding them.
Yeah, just understanding their capabilities and figuring out how we could help each other, and leveraging what they do and what we do to help build something bigger. But I mean, we're at the end of the day, we're on separate businesses, obviously, and pursuing different stuff. But yeah, I mean, and vendors too. I mean, O'Neill Steel and different suppliers and their teams as they come by the office, and just giving insights as to what's going on in their industry. That's been really helpful.
Cool. Yeah, it has been interesting to me to see how everyone in this industry is kind of a frenemy.
Yep.
Kind of setup. You don't find people with beef, right? And they are separate businesses, and they generally will be helpful. And to a person, the people I've met are just fantastic.
Yep,
okay?
absolutely.
Just to a person have been fantastic and willing to be helpful. And so I have seen what you're describing as a good bit of collaboration on, as long as it makes sense for both of our businesses, let's figure this out.
Yep.
And there is almost always a path towards figuring it out, right? Because at the end of the day, what drives that is someone needs the job done and they're willing to pay to have the job done, right? What does that look like? So when you say your shop can do a lot and you do have to depend on other shops, is that a everyday thing? Is that a every week thing? Is that every month thing that you're out there talking to people outside your business and learning kind of how their businesses operate and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, we're shipping hundreds of parts and sub-assemblies each month. And so, yeah, I mean, it's
routine for you.
Yeah, it's
then.
Pretty routine.
Okay.
It is. But the vast majority of the work happens in all the fabrication, most of the machining. If, it's really niche little machining that has to be outsourced. The main bulk of our outsourcing is like flame hardening or some specific heat treating that our furnace can't do. So there's like some,
because you guys do have a furnace. We didn't even cover that.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And so we do handle some heat treating and so just really like niche little items that we can't pick up. That's where other folks get involved. And but it's a good network of folks.
So knowing what you know now about, you got this business, you got these folks that you trust. It sounds like some really great allies within the business. Sounds like you've got some great allies outside the business. Do you think, given kind of Drew's vision for the world, do you think that things are going to change?
I do. I do for a number of reasons. I think, and we've seen it since COVID, that America needs more American manufacturing, whether it's we just need more of it. There is needs out there that are not being filled on the foundry side, for instance. I mean, there is a fraction of steel foundries compared to what there were 25 years ago. And it's getting harder and harder to get parts shipped in from China, and delays and just everything that goes with that. And so I think that demand for a while, and I wasn't in this business up until 3 years ago, but I think the demand is going to drive people to innovate and to look into, how do we double down on what we have? Because I do think these are the type of businesses that would be very hard to go start from scratch. They're very capital intensive. And so if there are, a business out there that you can acquire like what we did, it's like, how do you set that business up for the future? And I do think it's going to be different, whether it's the way you sell, whether it's the way you drive leads online, whether it's the way you subsidize your team on, through automation, or there's just a lot of different things but I do think it's going to happen. The adoption, I think, is going to be slow. And the adoption, I think, will come from changing of the guard with a lot of these companies.
So the generational shift.
Yeah, the generational shift. But that also poses a problem because I talk to a lot of aging and business owners in our industry right now, and they can't figure out who to sell to or how to create a succession plan. And so there does seem to be a gap there, that their family may have moved on and moved out of small town USA, and not everybody wants to move to that small town USA, but just trying to keep those businesses alive are critically important to our infrastructure and just our livelihood in America. I mean, whether we it's hard to realize that until you kind of see the things that we're doing to help keep, like in the wiring industry right now, power lines being installed in North Carolina, right? I mean, that's a critical piece that if you don't have the line to install, then you have no power. And so it's an interesting time.
It is,
and I feel like it's like right there on the cusp of and that's what one of the things I'm really excited about is just turning a industry that just really key little niche areas in our business that I think could have a real impact on other areas of other businesses that it's just ripe for disruption.
Well, so describe that. So, you say ripe for disruption, and we've talked about a lot of different things. Have there been any moments where you've kind of felt successful so far? Like, are there little successes you're building on? Are you hoping to have some in the future?
Yeah. So, I love small wins.
Yeah.
Like the big wins are they're great and all, but I love the small wins along the way, probably more so than the big hoorah,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a lot of those of just trying to be crafty. Like we're a hub zone contractor. I don't know if you know anything about SBA programming, but just trying to leverage all the opportunities that are out there to give us one step ahead. And so we're an SBA contractor. And doing a lot of work with the government and just trying to take what we have, and that's a benefit of being in a small town, right? And just trying to look at what are the benefits that we have, the opportunities at hand, pair those together, and just try to make something of it.
See that, too often, Drew, people point at the big moments, and they're like, look at that innovation. And the big moment is really not a big moment. It's the result of a million small moments. And what I have told people over and over and over again is, talk about the World Series, as baseball playoffs are going on now. They didn't win the World Series in Game 7. They won it in practice in May, right? So it really is the daily wins and the constancy of optimism and moving forward and alignment of allies and those things that lead to the kind of change that, I know we both want to see in the world, different viewpoints, different places, but positive change, right? Making the world a better place to live in. So look from Drew, right? Fairly still new in this industry, a pup, just a mere pup, only 3 years in, right? In the metals industry. Look 5 years away and tell me, you've got these, you've described kind of these shops that have these generational moments, maybe hard to find someone to acquire them. Do they continue? Do they not? What all happens there? They are incredibly high capital investment, right? To start a new shop, the machines are expensive, the facilitation, and then even if you did, the skills are almost impossible to find. So look 5 years out and tell me what Drew thinks the metals industry, the fabrication industry is going to look like 5 years from now.
Well, I think there's probably going to be fewer players than there are currently. And just for that very reason that we just talked about, that's one. I think it's going to be those that are innovated and have been working on that for the last 5 years will start to realize their gains. And I think in 5 years is probably that tipping point of when things really start changing. And up until that point, there's going to be a lot of, this is just my personal take, that there's some pushback on adoption of a lot of this stuff. It's just the way we've always done it. And this is, I'm nearing the end of my career and I don't really want to do that. But I do think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to see a lot of people retire, a lot of new people come into the industry with new ideas. And I just feel like those that are leaning into that and into talent, like, we're looking to hire, we just hired a couple of folks on our team, and they are not from the metals industry. They are coming from other industries, but they really understand how to go and do some specific things to help grow businesses, and kind of bringing that outside view into a business that doesn't necessarily have that is going to be important.
Excellent. So you're seeing 5-10 years. We talk about inflection points in industries, and you're seeing 5-10 years from where Drew sits today is probably the metals industry. We'll see a lot in the next 5. But you're saying 5 to 10 for sure. Yeah,
and it's not going to be, I don't think it's, the hard thing for me is like for the grocery delivery business, right? That was pretty evident that there was a lot of ships and, all these others that popped up. In this industry, it's not going to be as evident because for the person on the street, because they don't see this stuff, right? But if you're in the industry, I think there's going to be some pretty drastic changes. Just more visibility into supply chain. That's a really broken piece across the entire industry of, just how things delay each other. And American, for a long time, we hung our hat on this is American made and buy American made, right? But it's got to be more than that. It's got to be quality, and it's got to be built on time, and at a competitive price as well. And so that's where I think America really, we were great in that, and then we kind of lost our edge when we offshored so much to China and overseas. But I feel like we're kind of gaining that back. So as we gain that back over these next 5 years, I think that's when you're going to see, okay, we're not just going to bring it back, but we're going to innovate on it and make it better than it was before. And really, I think that'll open up more opportunities for more people wanting to get into the industry, that it's not just your old traditional, manufacturing where you're doing the same thing every day. It's different, and it's more advanced, and there's more opportunities for the future. And that, I think that will be more enticing.
What an optimistic outlook. I love it.
I think so.
So I'm definitely bullish on the industry. I wouldn't be part of it. So I think, I think that's a great place for us to stop. So I'd be curious if people wanted to reach out to Drew and people wanted to get in touch with you. Where would they go look for more information about you, your organization, your company, whatever?
The website address is tcmco.com, or you can email me at drew@tcmco.com. I'd welcome any interaction. We'd love to chat with anybody that has any questions or just wants to catch up.
Yeah, and if you've never been to Talladega, it is a great spot. There are a couple of racetracks in Talladega.
Yes, the dirt track.
Yeah, there's some great tracks out there. There's a great forest. That's a fantastic fall drive in Alabama, and there's some good barbecue.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I really do welcome anyone that, especially if you've never been in a machine shop, fab shop, but really anyone that wants to come and see what American manufacturing looks like. It's not all automotive like you see on TV. There's a lot more that goes into it. And so I welcome anyone that would love to see that firsthand to reach out to me, and I'd love to give them a tour.
Well, I'm going to do that. So
all right,
we're going to get a team together. Well, Drew, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I guess we're going to wrap there. And
sounds good. Thank you so much for having me.